noise. We're recording. We'll be quiet for a second and then I'll get us started. Welcome everybody. My name is Eric Sanderud. I'm project lead at VistaHops.com. And today in our series of interviews with Vista Hops folks, we have Max Shafer. He's the brewmaster at Roadhouse Brewing Company in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. There's many more things to say about Max, but one of them is that Max is probably the most experienced, or at least one of the most experienced Vista hop brewers in America. He's been a part of the Hop Research Council via Roadhouse Brewing. In fact, they were one of the ones that sponsored the Vista acreage in Washington State this past harvest. And so they've been brewing with Vista for many, many years and have even included it into year-round and one-off beers. And so Max, as one of the most Vista experienced professional brewers, very excited to talk with you today. Thanks for coming.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk Vista.
I'm seriously nerding out about learning about Vista from you. So let me get out of the way and tell us more about Roadhouse Brewery.
Yeah, for sure. Roadhouse Brewing Company. We're located in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. We started it about 10 years ago this year in a small 7-barrel brew house. We upgraded that in 2017 to a 30-barrel production facility. We decommissioned our original brewery and built a new one, a new pilot system on the town square right in Jackson. So if anyone's ever been to historic Jackson and taken a photo under the elk antler arches, our brew pub is right there, right in front of them. We have a pretty fun 10-barrel brew house in there with 5-barrel fermenters, so we can split up wort streams, play around with fun hops like Vista or other malts and yeast. And we distribute to 60 states and brew a lot of IPA, or excuse me, 6 states, and brew a lot of IPA and some Belgian-inspired beers and some other fun things like that.
Well, that's fantastic and really nice to learn more about the brewery. Let's get right to it. Vista. You've brewed a lot with Vista. Where has it shined? Where has it been duller? How should people use it? How excited should people be? How excited are you? Give us the full story.
Yeah, well, I think to say, just to say how excited we are, we just actually yesterday canned a new summer beer for us. We retired an old kind of legacy summer seasonal beer and integrated a new one. And this new one features, it's almost 2.5 pounds per barrel in the dry hop of Vista. It is the feature hop in this beer, which is really, really cool. So to say we're excited about it is probably an understatement. We're really stoked about Vista and what it's doing for this beer. Before that, we had integrated it into some of our rotating hazy IPAs. We brewed some Saison with it, some Pilsner with it. We've thrown everything we possibly can at it. And certainly the best way for us to describe Vista is it plays really well in the sandbox with other hops. We've obviously thrown the big boys at it, Citra and Mosaic, and it makes a beautiful beer, and that Vista really helps accentuate it. We've thrown a lot of public varietals at it. One of those rotating hazy IPAs was pretty heavy, Chinook and Cascade, and also some Vista, and it really shines. It really it kind of accentuates everything. And I think I was explaining it to someone the other week. It's like seasoning, a dish with a little extra salt. It just like really pops all those flavors. And for us, Vista really does that, and it shines beautifully, both as a feature hop, but it certainly does really well if you integrate a couple of other of your favorites with it.
Any specific kind of consistent, throughput of characteristics or storylines? Of course, different yeast, different timing, different hops. I mean, that's the black box in the art of brewing, is that things are not fully figure outable. But, if you were to generalize, kind of Vista's expression in different styles or in the way that you really like what you're looking for or expecting when you're putting it in a IPA, for example, what do you find?
Some of the main things that we found through sensory panels of both like just like plant material itself, but also in some of our smaller pilot batches, is kind of the papaya, this mango, a lot of those big tropical fruits that come out of it. They're not like punch you in the face tropical, but they're definitely there. And we've actually started to pick up on a little bit of strawberry as we've integrated it into some other things as well. At Roadhouse, we don't do much kettle edition hopping, so we try and reserve as many of our hop pounds as we can for a whirlpool. We actually integrate a bunch of hops just right into the fermenter at knockout, kind of like that bio transformation type hopping, and of course some pretty heavy dry hopping. So this new beer that we released, it features Vista both in the whirlpool, in the fermenter at knockout for a little bit of bio transformation, and then a really heavy hand of it in the dry hop. And it's partnered up with some other pretty bold hops that we tone down pretty heavily, ones that are pretty characteristic for shining through just about everything else you throw at it. So we tone those down just to let them be there as a small supporting role and friend for Vista. So we really get that tropical note that pops through. And we were drinking it yesterday after the can run, and everyone pretty unanimously was like, I get a little bit of strawberry to complement that mango out of it. And it's been great. It certainly acts kind of nobly in pilsners and hoppy pilsners. We've tried them both dry hopped or just pretty traditional hopping with Vista, and it's really crisp. It's refined. It provides a nice little tropical punch to one of these lagers, whether it's dry hopped or late kettle additions. And we've just loved it. And you know, we don't make a lot of Belgian beer. We do make a couple, but we've thrown it at our saison before, and it's really cool what's happened in our saison and that tropical component from Vista interacting with our saison yeast or whatever other Belgian yeast we're using. It's always surprising us, and we've fallen in love with it for all those reasons. Is that it really provides beautiful hop flavor and aroma in our beers, and this IPA is certainly one to be excited about.
I'm personally hoping to find the opportunity to try some of that. You've got me thirsty. So to that point, what has the feedback been from any consumers, people who've enjoyed the beers that have visited over the time, both like kind of internally your own sensory you kind of touched on, but other folks, like, does it seem to be the kind of thing where I think we're looking for like a hazy IPA we're not trying to go out of left field with it, but we're trying to bring a unique twist. And, does Vista make a difference in a way that's kind of positive, or does people just still enjoy it, knock them back?
When we look at the development of recipes, and especially from our production standpoint, we really try and make sure that the consumer, whether they pick up our core, our flagship hazy IPA or the flagship IPA in our clear IPA line, or anything, our pale ale, whatever, we really want to make sure that there's not much repeat in the hops that go into each of those. So we have a beer that features Mosaic heavily. We have a beer that features Citra heavily. And now we have a beer that features Vista pretty heavily, very heavily. And I try and do that just so the consumer can try something unique and different when they pick up a Roadhouse 6-pack. And when we first started using Vista, it was in one of these rotating hazy IPAs that we canned, and it featured a lot of Cascade, a lot of Centennial and Chinook. And it was stuff that we had kind of picked up from our consumers at our brew pub. We have 30 draft lines up there, about 10 to 15 are provided by our production facility, and then the other handles are all one-off beers that are only available there. And we had a couple of brewers go in there who wanted to start playing around with some really beautiful Cascade and some really beautiful Chinook that we had done in selection in Parma and Yakima, and those beers flew. Like they disappeared. We brewed some egregious 6 to 7 pound per barrel dry hop Citra hazy just to have something like that on tap. But it was amazing that these beers that were hopped with your traditional C hops, people were just loving it. This is totally anecdotal, but I think the consumer is kind of coming full circle back in what they're looking for in a hoppy beer. I think some people might be kind of tired of some of the more feature hops that we've seen in American craft over the past 5 or 10 years. And so when we started putting Vista into this hazy IPA called Mountain Jam, it people loved it. It was their favorite one they had in a long time. And we had thrown Southern Hemisphere hops at previous iterations. We had thrown pretty heavy loads of Mosaic and Eldorado at other ones, but people loved this iteration of Mountain Jam that had classic Cascade and Chinook and then a lot of Vista in it. And it was really, the feedback we kept getting from people was how unique the beer was. It was something they hadn't tasted before, or probably just hadn't tasted in a long time. Just tasting beautifully, grown and cared for Cascade and some Vista in those. So people have really enjoyed it, and it's been a great, I think, change for people's palate and how they're picking their beers. And it's some new flavors. It's obviously, that's what's beautiful about craft brewing is what's new, what's different. If I had a magic ball to tell me what new style of IPA people would be wanting tomorrow, that'd be fantastic. I think every brewer in America wants to know what they can do to make new IPA styles and whatnot. But when it comes to the hops, I think picking something like Vista and pairing it up with another combination of hops that you're really passionate about is going to provide some unique aromas and flavors for a consumer that they haven't tried before or just haven't tried in a long time.
I would love to then ask you about kind of your perspective, why public hops are important, to the industry, to brewers like you. You serve on the Hop Research Council, so you have some, you're looking at public hops from a kind of you're not just out buying hops, you're involved with the Hop Research Council. I'd be really interested in your perspective on public hops and what their value is for our industry.
Yeah, I think when I think about my role in the Hop Research Council, I sit with a bunch of other brewers who, probably spill more beer in a day while they're canning or kegging or doing cellar operations than we make in a year. And it's pretty flattering to sit on that in the HRC with the brewers I do. And luckily I've brewed in the Jackson Hole and the greater Teton area for about 10 years now. So I've gotten to have some great relationship with the growers in Parma, and we're realistically not that far from Yakima as well. So I've gotten to know a lot of the growers, and without naming names and giving away some deep conversations we've had, but I've had some really deep conversations with some of the growers about why I do care about public hops. And while it might not be the right answer, I don't think there's a wrong or right answer for this. But I care about public hops because I think it makes things a little bit more accessible to everyone. As a craft brewer who's constantly fighting for shelf space, I think that could translate to maybe a hops grower who's trying to put in, a 100-acre yard or smaller. And how can they start to grow and kind of crack into it to not only continue to feed the machine and the beast that is craft beer and the overall consumption of hops that's going on in our industry. But I think it's important because it opens up this door to growers and brewers alike who might not be able to acquire or procure proprietary hops. Either they're priced out of it or they don't have those connections and relationships yet. And I think that applies to both the brewer and the grower side. But I think it's really important that we're, really focusing on the grower as well. As I've been on the HRC more and more, and I think that's something we're really trying to hone in on, is making sure that if we develop this hop and breed this hop over 5, 6, 7, 8 years, it's going to help all of us and work for all of us as well. So I think just opening up those lines of communication, making sure we're supporting our growers, but also brewers who want to play with these new hops have that opportunity as well, is why public hops are important to me.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And we're at that time, right at the end here. Where can people find Roadhouse Brewing out on the internet and support your work?
Yeah, you can find us at roadhousebrewery.com. You can find us on Instagram, which is Roadhouse Beer is our handle. We have a Facebook page as well. And of course, if you're in the Jackson Hole or greater Wyoming area, you can probably find our beer. I'd encourage people who are traveling to Jackson to stop by the Roadhouse Pub and Eatery, which is our restaurant and pilot brewery on Town Square. As I mentioned earlier, there's probably 15 or 20 beers that you can only get at that location. So it's a lot of fun to go up there and try some of our beers. And we're distributed throughout the Intermountain West as well. So look for Roadhouse and drink some Vista hopped beer.
Thank you, Max, and thank you so much for spending your time with us. Thanks everyone listening or watching for joining us. You can give a comment or a share if you like this content. Help share the good news of Vista hops. And once again, I'll always sign off with this: I'm not the best interviewer. I'm always trying to get better. So if you got anything, let me know in the comments on how I could be better. Thanks so much, Max.
Well, thanks, Eric. Great talking.